Hey, so just a few words on the latest situation with Ukraine. It's really escalating. It looks like the so-called Luhansk People's Republic has been recognized now by Russia as an independent entity, and also by Syria, Venezuela, Cuba, Bolivia, which are not really surprising. They're the usual sort of lineup of anti-West uh, governments. So it's not at all surprising. China's stance is going to be interesting because ostensibly, Beijing and Moscow are on the same page when it comes to the narrative against the West. But China actually might find itself in a contradictory position because they're always talking about respecting the internal affairs of nations. I don't think Xi Jinping is going to lose a lot of sleep over damaging relations with Kiev, but nevertheless, it's hypocritical, and it would obviously come across that way if they were to, back the disintegration of Ukraine. Um, there might be some echoes here of Yugoslavia. The breakup of Yugoslavia. We might be seeing the breakup of Ukraine. I'm not saying the geopolitical situation is the same, but in terms of the fragmentation, um, this isn't going to be good for Russia because apparently the Russian stock market's already taken a tumble. Apparently, Putin has made a long, rambling speech. It was full of blood and soil nationalism. Um, I don't know what Moscow is going to expect the West to respond. Well, they expected sanctions. Sergei Lavrov has tried to downplay that. But what Zelensky is going to do, what Kiev is going to do in response to this. Um, what's glaringly obvious is the propaganda campaign to try and vilify Ukraine in order to justify this invasion. After days and weeks and months of saying they weren't planning to invade, essentially that's what Russia has done today. I understand there's Russian troops now in Donbass, so it's a very, very serious situation. I'm not going to say too much more because this is still a developing situation. I don't know how Kiev is going to respond. I think it would be foolish, obviously, for them to go into Donbass right now because they could be crushed by Russia. But clearly, there's going to be a response beyond sanctions, and this could really escalate, which is awful. War is a terrible thing, but um, it's interesting, the Stop the War Coalition, which is a organization I've got no time for. Even they condemn Russia's incursion, saying something. That doesn't mean that they're neutral, though. I mean, Lindsey German and formerly Jeremy Corbyn have appeared on Russia Today. It's not a neutral organization. They had a statement about this. Their first line was condemning Russia's incursion, but the rest was pretty much blaming NATO, and it was the usual narrative of NATO expansionism has caused this crisis. My position is I think Putin would find an excuse whether or not Ukraine wanted to join NATO. That's my thoughts. Um, it's a complex situation, but morally, I just don't think there's any getting around the fact that Ukraine is a sovereign nation, whether Russia likes it or not, and Russia is the aggressor here. Um, I think Putin's making a big mistake. In fact, that's what The Economist was heading on this week. I've just ordered it on eBay. Putin's big gamble, and it was sort of Putin painting around the whole area red, and then Ukraine was his white spot, i.e., it's a mistake. It's quite a clever headline. The Economist gets some good coverage, actually. Um, Goodness knows where this is going to go. I think the sanctions are going to be hammering. I think what could happen is Beijing could distance itself from Moscow. They'll probably outwardly support Moscow, but I think behind the scenes, China won't necessarily be very happy about this because they'll see it as a foolish move by Putin and a destabilizing move by Putin. Of course, China could also be planning the same thing with Taiwan. It's not totally different in both cases. You have major powers that are claiming rights over a smaller territory. So that could also happen. Maybe not this year, but Yeah, I won't say too much more because this is still a developing situation, but that's my thoughts. It's clearly escalated. Um, I think it is possible that Putin has sort of dug himself into this. I think initially it was grandstanding, it was sort of saber rattling to the West, but now, it really has kicked off, and Putin can't back off now because his, fanatical pro-Russian support in that part of Ukraine. So if Putin didn't actually back them up, they would see it as a betrayal. Um, so Putin's got himself into this mess, and unfortunately, a lot of young Ukrainian soldiers and young Russian soldiers are going to die because of Putin's grandstanding and Russia's belligerent behavior, and it's a tragedy. But anyway, this is still a developing situation. There's been fierce criticism, of course, from countries like Lithuania and Poland, less so from Hungary. Um, but I think sanctions alone are not going to be enough. I think that there isn't going to be direct fighting between Russian and NATO troops because that really, really would escalate things beyond control. But I think NATO is going to have to respond somehow, and Western powers are going to have to respond somehow. So it's a situation I'm going to keep a close eye on.